So welcome to District 4, the Innovation and Information and News, or to the point in information and news, depending upon how long you've been with us. um, I'm your host, Alef. So I got a lot of questions on my last video. Now, I tend to get questions on my videos, period, but the last one involved race in America, financial state standpoint, and I got a lot of questions. So I had to sort of narrow it down, like I always do, to the bulk questions that people ask me and then answer it all at once. Unless your question is not asked commonly, I generally will only answer those personally. But the rest of them, I think anybody can benefit from learning from what people ask. One of the things I was asked that I'm going to cover at the top of this was somebody literally asked me, how did Karen become the definition of a Karen? Um, and I'm going to explain that first, and then I'll go into the rest of the questions regarding this part of the section of the video that I kind of hit on, kind of knowing and expecting that everybody would actually know what that is. And I guess it makes sense that you wouldn't be clear on it. So a lot of people were familiar with the term, but not really in depth like that. So I'll go into it a little bit. I don't want to harp on it too much, but I do want to make sure people kind of understand so they can fit it within the confines of the whole economic structure that I was talking about with that video. Okay, but before we get started, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. I do have a TikToks. A lot of you just hit that one. It's a more relaxed. People feel more comfortable there because I'm really just not in such a structured setting. And so they ask me a lot of relationship stuff that's not really related to what's on YouTube. Those same people still go to YouTube, but you guys have to remember to subscribe because the content is different. The platform is different, so you want to make sure we're covering both platforms. But thank you for coming, and any questions anybody might have, I will always ask. I do go on sporadically, so do it whenever I have time or I feel I have a chance to actually put the time into what it is that the subject matter would be for that day here on YouTube. So make sure you hit the notification bell. In doing so, it'll make it easier for you when whenever I go on, you'll get that notification. And if you have time to come on, you can come on. A lot of people like to sit and in-depthly watch my videos, so you can always go back and do that. I do like to have people here at my lives, though, because it makes it all that more interesting, right? Okay, so now we're going to go in a little bit into the part of the video that I talked. If you haven't had a chance to see it, please go back and look at it. It is to your benefit, white, black, male, female, otherwise, to really get this information in one place. What you'll also learn about this channel is that I take a collective of things, make sure they're substantial, validated, legitimate, and then I put them in sort of a structure. That may not be there, because oftentimes I have content that comes from just things that's happening every day that I go in and verify and then share the information that I learned once I did the research. Somebody asked me where my research background. I do have a research background. I guess because I did it in real time, everybody's like, how do you figure? So I've been doing that so long. Whether it be for entertainment, whether it be for economic purposes, schooling, education, talk shows, films, things that you have to have information that's accurate. And a lot of times you're in a time limit. So I figured out how to do that stuff fast. Especially if I'm in a courtroom or something and somebody says something and they need to have something backed up with that. You don't have time. So you need to make sure you do that. In-depth research just is part of legal. So, I mean, really, you have to have as much information as you can, especially if you're working for a defense attorney. You have to, really, really good ones. Anybody that's trial-based attorneys, they need every bit of information they can, because they need to get that in there and get it into their arguments into the courtroom. You also have to make sure it's valid. So that's why you'll see me be a real stickler on whether or not my information is accurate. So yesterday when I said something, I don't make blanket comments. Blanket comment meaning there's no substance, there's no like backing to it. I'm saying it, I've heard it before. Hi, you'll never just see me just do that. So I'll always go in and even if it's in real time, because I've learned to do that quickly, I'll figure out whether or not it's true or not. And I don't have a problem being wrong. I just want to make sure we get the information to you correctly. All right. So that's the answer to that question. We're going in talking about the questions that people asked me about my video from yesterday. One of the main ones was Karen. I did touch on that a little bit, kind of thinking everybody kind of knew what it was. But when I started getting the questions, I was very shocked. The first question that I got, that's very floored by, because I didn't even recognize people didn't understand that, why we call this type of person a Karen. Karen is a person. It's the name of the woman. Her name was Karen. And this type of behavior has gone on for centuries. I'll give you some history about it in 1 second, but I want to give this definition first. She was a woman that there was a little girl, a young woman, selling. Sorry, that's the second lady. That's the second Karen. First Karen, in a broad scope, it was a woman that there was a young girl that was selling. It was two of them. So the second one, well, I think the original one was the girl selling the water. The second one may have been the barbecue situation where there's people barbecuing and this woman goes up to her. Her name is also Karen. But I think the original Karen was the little girl. So if somebody correct me if I'm wrong, because I would love to check that, because I looked it up and didn't find the original person. I found Karens because the term is used so often now. I found a bunch of them. But I remember when the term was created, and I remember the woman when his name was Karen, and she ultimately got fired for this video that she ended up having. And it was the mother that took the video, to the best of my knowledge, that about her daughter selling water outside on a day that had about 100 degrees of worth of temperature. And she was in the front of her home. This woman, this executive, she was an executive, comes outside to this little girl who happened to be a black girl. Okay. This woman was a white woman. Her name was Karen. And she went out to this little girl and demanded that, like, I think she move over 3 feet or something. Move over 3 feet, and then, you shouldn't be selling water anyway. It's illegal. And the accusations of how she's speaking to this young woman, this young girl, at this age, with a woman that she didn't think was her mother standing there, sort of became the outrageousness of the scenario. It was not her block, this Karen's block, and it was not for her to tell that little girl where to be, and that she said it was illegal for her to sell water, which was a lie. That's not true. So it became a big thing. And it became a big thing because, first of all, it was outrageous for her to tell a lie. Why are you lying like that for no reason? Why are you even bothering this little girl? People sell lemonade and everything else outside. Why are you even just harassing a kid? So this girl was a little girl with bottles of water trying to make sure people weren't hot. And it was outrageous. You had to actually see the video. I remembered it in real time. So I was actually looking at it like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. But it was her mannerisms and her demeanor and her, what would be known as entitlement. But that's not really the base of Karen. And I'll go into the psychology of that a little bit, but I wanted to define it first. So to answer your question of why Karen out of all the names, it was the name of the original person that started to display this behavior. This behavior was already happening. But with video cameras, you can tape stuff. And so now we get a chance, like we did with the police, to see stuff that people explain to you that you don't get if you're not experiencing it. So that's why it became known as a Karen, because once we started to see this behavior again in the next person, which happened almost immediately, then you could say, you know what, you're nothing but a Karen. And then it caught on, and that became the term that defined those behaviors. Now, what are the behaviors that a Karen would take, right? I explained a little bit. I said they sort of, I guess a good example, I used the movie Karen. There's a movie, I think it's on Pluto TV now, but I don't know where it was originally, that actually has in it, and somebody asked me about the movie because I couldn't find it. It has... I hate to say Tira Mara's ex-husband because he has his own name, Corey Hardnick. Hendrick, something like that. I only hear his last name. I never actually visibly seen it, so I'm guessing. But he's in it. He's the headliner. He plays the husband. And then this one woman that I don't ever remember her name, but she was in Hustle and Flow. She was in 8 Mile. She's a really good actress. I feel like she's pretty underrated because she makes her roles look easy and they're not. Plays the Karen. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. I really think your name should be known because I'm being rude by not even knowing it. But that's the movie I was watching. But the behaviors is what it is, okay? And the motivation behind that goes back to what I was saying yesterday, which is why I used that as an example. If you are cutting, you have to think money is an emotional thing for people because we were talking economics. You have to understand what privilege means by way of racism. If I am able to get things because of something I have, and I feel like you're taking that away from me, i.e., if I can earn money because I have, as my, I have as my company, Microsoft, and you come and you make Microsoft, I feel like you're killing my thunder. You're cutting into my profits. So if you take race and you look at it that way, and I'm used to getting things because I'm a white woman, and that's what I have, that's the majority of how I get things, anything you do is going to be a threat to me. Because you don't have what I have, right? You're not white, and you're not a woman. And you're not able to have these privileges that you keep trying to take away from me. It's not really, you say, oh, it's entitlement, but I think if you look at the definition of entitlement, which I could bring up if you want me to, it doesn't really fit a Karen. Okay? So the definition of entitlement is to one that is inherited, deserving, or privileged, right? The fact of having a right to something. And that's not really the basis that you feel like you have a right because you're white. It's like you're taking away something from me, which is money or opportunity. So I say those are different because entitlement goes sort of one thing. I'm white and therefore I am. But it's deeper than that. Racism is deeper than that. It's you're cutting into something that I'm getting for having this. Just like envy and jealousy seem the same. But if you delve into what they really are and the attitudes that go behind them, they are very different, right? If I envy someone, it's more personalized. It's me wanting what that person specifically has. I don't want them to have it. I don't care if everybody else in the world gets it. I don't want you to have it. Jealousy could be anyone. It's broad. So if you say entitlement, it's very broad. It could be entitled to anything. But it's more of a case of you specifically will not take this from me because you don't deserve it. I deserve it. So I can come in here and tell you whatever I want because I've done it for years. It's kind of that, it's a little more in depth. So the way that it works nowadays, because racism has a different form, that's what I was speaking about. Karens have a different way of doing things. Gone are the days where you can blatantly do it, but you're going to be penalized very heavily. People just won't tolerate it. Companies cannot tolerate it. If you remember the movie Karen, they didn't take it from the HOA in the movie. They literally said, listen, this man's, watch the movie, but long story short, they were telling her that the person that she had harassed lately, that happened to be not a white person, actually had a civil rights attorney father. So it happenstance that he happened to be at a status where they could make that public. Otherwise, she'd been doing it for years and nobody said anything. They didn't agree with her, but they didn't say anything. So that's two versions of it. The first version of how you get in trouble with a Karen is that they add up stuff that doesn't go together. So anything it's like you're targeted. You're a target. And that's very different than somebody just being entitled. If you're entitled, it's everywhere you go. I'm entitled, because at this dealership, I'm entitled here. But if you are, Karen is more of a targeted situation. And it's more in depth because it's hard to duck something if you're the target. Because that means you're zeroed in on that specifically. So Karen's base is racism, but it can't come out like that because you aren't able to do the process. It doesn't show until they attack you. But that's their goal all along, you see. So maybe in Karen, the original Karen's mind, she didn't like the mother. Her and the mother did not get along, we later found out. So what better way to get to the mother than to get to the daughter? The comments that were made about the mother was that she had this little girl who happened to be mixed. So you have to think about it being a target. And I took the word entitlement sort of away when I was giving an explanation for that reason, because I don't want people to just think it's just entitlement. It's too easy to brush it off. It's a very dangerous position to be in because oftentimes they're in position of authority, such as this Karen was an executive, the original Karen. That I think is the original Karen. Somebody tell me if I'm wrong and it's actually the other lady. But I was thinking, if I remember back in real time, because I couldn't find it when I looked it up, that was the original Karen. So it's a process. Karen also describes a process. The half of it is that you're targeted. So it's you specifically. They're after you. So it's harder to duck and dodge. The way that it's done, part of the process, is that they have to collect up stuff because they have to still pretend they like you. Otherwise, it doesn't look real. That's the game. The game is to make it look legit. So they do have actual laws that apply to what the person is saying. It may be a real policy at your job, but they're not being honest in saying you're the one that's doing it. They're doing it, making it look like you did it, or you did it, and it could have been just a regular mistake, but they're not going to turn, they're going to do it, they're going to turn it into a group of things. It has to be a group of things so that there's no way you can get out of it. I don't care if it's a lie. Karen will lie in a minute. The woman said, it's against the law. It wasn't against the law. That little girl lived there. She could definitely, there was no law saying that she couldn't sell water outside of her house. None at all. When somebody fact checked her, they realized it was a blatant lie. She was lying to that little girl, but it didn't matter. If they can't get caught in it, then it's part of the collective. If you look at the movie Karen, she kicked down the woman's trash cans. And she had to come out and pick it up, and she was like, what the? Because she was angry at that point. I told you to do something and you didn't do it. She started out when they moved into the neighborhood originally. What is the first thing she said? She looked for something wrong. They happened to have their trash cans out because they didn't know you were supposed to bring them in at a certain, nobody told them. And no one continued to tell them. So she said, they're nice. And they're like, yes, she's black. Oh my God, what do black people like? And you see them having this sort of conversation amongst each other, right? Her and her other racist friend. And well, are they at least nice people? And she says, what? Well, they're nice, but they didn't bring their trash cans. She's already starting, and they haven't even been in the neighborhood 2 seconds. So it started, that little voice in your ear is how a Karen actually starts. It doesn't start, and she looks friendly because she's being nice to you. Beginning of the movie, hey, how's it going? The non-racist girl comes up and says, hey, we probably need some, diversity in this neighborhood. And she's like, yeah, totally. Oh my God, so sure. But when she's sitting talking to her brother, she's like, I can't believe how they're taking over. That's not the same conversation, right? She knows what to say. She's an adult. I don't practice, but yes, I did go to law school. Sorry, I answered your question early. So you go in and you say that. It's a process. So by the time Karen attacks, she's already outlined a bunch of stuff in her head. And it can happen in a few seconds. It's not the duration of time. It's really how she can present it to people to make it look legit. Okay, it's presentation in it with a Karen. So that's why people call them out, because they have to stop the process. Oh, they didn't first it was they didn't take their trash cans out, and then she put up cameras that went directly to their house. She didn't have cameras that were facing anybody else's house, but she has an explanation for all these things. Well, we're good at with security, or do you think it? It's the subtleties. They're nice, but every HOA meeting, she had something new to say about the people that just moved in that nobody even had a chance to know. By the time they even got a chance to speak to them, she had already said too much about them, and they didn't like them already. So when you say entitlement, it seems quick. It seems almost diminishing. It's much more than that. People are losing jobs behind this stuff. People are getting kicked out of places behind this stuff. People are getting removed from banks and restaurants and places. It's too in depth for there not to be a problem with calling this out. It's getting called out towards the end of the process when it's visible. You see. So I threw that in there because I wanted you to know where it came from. It doesn't come necessarily from entitlement only. Maybe that's mixed in there, sure. But it's really, the danger of it is not the entitlement part. It's the part that the person is targeted. Because you have to watch a targeted person. You have to be so invested in this person that it's almost too much. Like, it's got to take up time. If you look at the movie, she's using her cameras to see what they're doing. She's actually looking at... Nobody uses cameras for that. You want to see what's going on outside in case your house is in danger. That's it. But you're not really looking at a specific person. You're just looking at anybody that's dangerous. She wasn't. She's looking specifically at them. She started out asking them, "Hi, how's it going? I'm Karen." Why? Because she wanted information. And it started at the beginning. So that's why I bring this to everyone's attention, to tell you to look at it more deeply, because they do work with you, because they are at your local bank, because they are on your homeowners association. And most of the time they maneuver their way into a position where they can make some decisions. So if they don't want you there, they can get rid of you. Or at least they have a say in getting rid of you. Okay? It is an old-time rivalry between women. Often, a Karen is a woman. All the time, a Karen is a woman. There are Chads in the world, but they're very rare. Chads is the male counterpart to a Karen. But it's already tough being a woman just in general. But Karens have this thing where they go ahead and target you. It could look like this. Like I said, originally, nobody knew the story. So they realized that she was just sort of harassing a kid, and everyone saw it was a kid, and it happened to be a black kid, and she was going all in like this girl was an adult. But you could just come in the store they're in. You don't have to be doing anything, and it doesn't have to be a long period of time, just long enough for you to say something or do something that they can use. This is why I said entitlement makes it sound simple. Anything, if you say white privilege, that sounds like it's just simple. But we're not talking white privilege is not enough. We're talking straight finances. People are emotional over money. I told you the amount given to me by a woman that did the research about how much more as a white person she makes each year versus being any other race. And it was like $389,000. I am guessing. Please go back and look at the video so you can get the exact amount. And I think it was like made it down to the 43 cents. That's a lot of money to give up if you think you have it. And it will drive people. Okay? So I say all that to say, I have to answer more questions, but I say all that to say to give you a clear definition of how dangerous a Karen actually is. It is not just entitlement. It is the fact that they take this feeling of hatred, discontent, dislike, unhappiness, and they target a person. And then they begin a process, which it does take, of basically defaming the person, because you can't have credibility and they take you down. It's not going to work. This is why her process ended when the civil rights guy got involved, because he had credibility. He was a well-known civil rights attorney. That's how a lot of times somebody will escape a Karen. It is because they're already well-known and people know that what she's saying isn't true. But if you're not, and you just encounter a person that nobody knows is racist, because she's always nice. Karen, the new face of racism, she's going to be your best friend, because that's how she gets information from you. That's how she's not detected. She'll be friends with all the black people in the office. Not really friends. You don't ever really go to her house or anything. But she's your friend, you know, like you'll hang out a little bit. And she leaves early, you know, throw out a couple inappropriate comments and then go home. But it's not because she wants to be friends with you. It's because she is trying to get information. Okay. If you have more questions about that, let me know. But for right now, I'm going to move on to the other question, because I'm going to make sure everybody gets some of what they need in there. I spoke finances, and so I talked about 84% of the American persons actually are involved in finances, economics, something to do with the structure of money being earned, achievements, anything doing with finances, you know, the ability to build money, profits. We're a capitalistic society. But I also alerted everybody that and this was just in real time. I literally thought it was going to be Asians. I'm sorry. I'm not saying it in a racist way. I was saying it as in what it looked like versus what the numbers actually said. And this is why I always check the statistics. It was wrong. But if you looked at a certain statistic, it did look like 63%. But once you broke it down and did it overall, you realize that 84% were actually Caucasian males. 84%. In order to do that, you have to have financial literacy. Now, versus the 9% of Asians and the 5% of African Americans. Black people. Anybody color, basically, thrown in there in that 5%. And the reason why it looks like everywhere you go, Asians are dominating the finance world versus really who's actually doing it are the white males. I say that because women don't always get a chance to work, but incorporated in that is just whites in general. Okay, but I said it to make a point that it's predominantly white males if you were to break it down. Because their percentage is the highest. Nobody else has a percentage except for African Americans, who are 4% less than Asians. So it looks like if you see a minority in finance, that it's an Asian person. So the statistics are throwing you off because there's no other ones to give. So it looks visibly, because you have to break a statistic down into a visual. When you go to work, the statistic that you're seeing are Asians, because the next number is 9%, and that's an Asian person. And you see some sprinkles of black people in there, and that's their 5%. But if you really look, and this will help with racism too. Go back to the first video. I'm just answering questions here. This will help with your understanding of racism too, because if you are the only person with knowledge of finance, if you're helping to build the structure of the money that goes in and out of this country, if you are well versed in how to make people money, well, then why wouldn't you be at the top of the food chain? It almost doesn't make sense that we're questioning why they are. We're being distracted by racism, the emotional racism. We're looking over here, which is an important piece. Somebody asked me, oh, did you not know that there's emotions connected to racism? Because it can't. No, I'm not saying I don't know that. I'm just saying understand that is also why it is also distracting. It's helping to continue it going because you're only looking at one part of it. You have to look at the whole thing in order to solve a problem. But that piece no one wants to look at because most people don't go into finance. They just complain about it all the time. Most people do not invest in the country. If you look at the stock market, a person going into an interview asking for stock options, you have to know to ask for these things. I say all that to say this, to help answer your question a little bit more. So the majority of the money, you can break down stat-wise. I might be able to do it here if I have time. Job-wise, for millionaire African Americans, millionaire minorities, comes, well, maybe not all minorities, millionaire, mostly brown and black people, come from sports. Okay. We're talking music industry or just entertainment as a whole. So we're just going to throw it all together and just say entertainment in general. That's it, all versions of entertainment. Now, keep that in the back of your mind because I'm getting ready to blow your mind for about 5 minutes. Within the confines of the overall economy, do you know entertainment is only 6.9%? So out of that 6.9%, that's what people that are in entertainment industry are getting paid from. Look at the top jobs. They're financial based. Okay, let's move on because I'm going to actually break down some more stuff because I love to give you stats and statistics. It makes valid what I'm saying, right? So $8.1 trillion is involved in what would ultimately trickle down economics, right? If you have $1.8 billion circulating and you get 6.9%, how much are you missing? I mean, it's just crazy, right? That's why I want to give you numbers, okay? Let's talk about I have a little bit of a breakdown here for you. Trying to figure out where to go so that I can kind of like let you know. The top paid. Okay, oh, this is what I want to tell you. Okay, so out of the NFL, okay, we're going to just use them as an example. This is across the board with every sports, right? Because sports has to bring in, what, $19.2 billion a year? Or $19.2 billion. I don't know if that's annually because it wasn't marked. So, but $19.2 billion roughly, okay? 71 billion if you're going past America, right? Just all around. But here's the thing. The top paid, I'm looking for his numbers. The top paid, no, I'm wrong. I'm sorry. Let me correct. Okay, so 71 billion. Out of 71 billion, 19.2 comes from ticket revenues. We have 20.65 coming from other things like product sales and product associations and anything to do with that, right? Out of that, billions of dollars, the top paid NFL for endorsement deals gets 20 million. It sounds like, oh, that's a lot of money, but it's not a lot if you compare it to what they're actually bringing in business-wise and where it's coming from. It isn't coming from the players themselves. It's coming from what they're making off the players. If you endorse something and I get $20.65 million for you endorsing it and I pay you 15, am I okay with that? Yeah. If I'm okay because, I'm getting paid $20.65 billion off of you. And I paid you $20 million. So If you are, I think it comes from the mindset of just getting what you were given and doing the best with that, right? Athletic wise, the built is there most of the time. It's the same reason why slavery was used the way that it was used, because athletically speaking, built wise, they were able to do the work if they were healthy. So it's another physicality of things that they give you that you just made work for you. But if you're not understanding the financial backing on all that, you cheat yourself. And whatever you think you're getting is not as much as you could be making. Otherwise, you get limits put on you because they need to keep you there because they're making money off of you. So I hate to say it that way because it sounds sinister, in a sense, but I think it's a habit forming, right? If you starting from the beginning, if you go back to my first video, I told you how the country started making money off of youth or just minorities or just people coming into the country, period. But because you don't learn finance and how that profit turned into racism, one version of it, then you're cheating yourself. You're going to constantly be used all the time. You're going to constantly work at the company instead of figuring out a way to earn the company. I did a study one time when I was in college, and I did it on interviews. One of my jobs when I got out of college, one of my first ones was to interview people. And you know what I saw when I was doing these interviews? I noticed how different people asked for stuff. And people that don't know finance, and I just won't even put it on a minority person, I'll just say in general, people that don't know finance came in there and said, what are you paying? And I could have lowballed them. I generally didn't, but let's pretend I did. And I would say, we pay $60,000 when the job's really worth $150,000. Versus the Harvard grad that came in and said, listen, I know this job pays $150,000. I come from Harvard. I want $2. And you can give it to me in this over this period of time. I know you can't pay that right now. The job is just going to pay what it pays, but I want it in this and over this period of time. And we literally had people come in and negotiate monies because they already knew what it was worth. If you look at people that understand money, they get a lot farther regardless of what race they are because it's useful. It's like knowing the law. It's why my mentor said do both of those, all three of those. You have to know how to negotiate because you have to not just take the information that you have and learned, but you have to apply it. And an application in business or when you're doing anything becomes a negotiation. And you can't negotiate or override a negotiation if you don't know the policies. You have to know how to interpret them. That is why if a person is negotiating with an attorney, it's going to be very different than if they just negotiate with you directly. That's why people hire an attorney, because an attorney, you're going to go in there and go like, this job pays $60,000 and we can give them, okay, maybe it'll pay $150, but we can't give the extra $50 that the lawyer will say, but according to this law, you can. Not only can you, but you have to. You know what I mean? It's like they know. So you're not going to be able to pull the wool over the eyes. You know what I mean? So that was kind of to give you some interesting things about how finances made a difference when it came to racism. But I was also talking about how much more money they were making. And some of the reasons why. I used all this to give you reasons why. You know what I mean? It's not enough. If product endorsements are what's making the business money, and if product placement is what's making the business money, and if deals that are, then you need to be a part of that process, and you'll get paid what you're really worth. That's when you hear like a finance person will come and say multiple streams of income. That's what they're telling you. They're telling you, okay, if you're a football player, great. That opens the door. Now, what businesses do you own? Oh, okay, you don't own any? Do you have stock options? You'll start hearing people talk like that if they're trying to negotiate for you. I'm making up stuff, and I don't know what people actually ask for, but I'm just saying. Yeah, I'm not trying to put ideas in people's head either. But that's what I was saying. That is why I was saying some of the things that I was saying. So to answer your question, that's probably it's to get that 84% was to let you know what was really going on. Because even I made a mistake just verbally saying it. I had to look it up and see what was actually there. And when you hear those numbers, it starts to make sense now. If you understand that racism is financially based, you have to make sense of that. Now, going into the emotional part of it, because I was getting hammered when people were like, it's not that simple, you simplified it. Okay, yes, you're correct, but there's another part to it. Then we get into the complexities. It's very easy when something is emotional to confuse it. Okay, so I made that separate. I'm not saying that emotionally people don't get involved. Now, explore with me this theory for a few seconds. This is not just my theory, it is theories that are out there, and I actually did some research on. The base of the, okay, so I don't even know how to present this. This is going to be so. In real life, if we're all being honest, there's no race on attraction. Not in real life. You can be the racist person in the world and somebody will come by and you will like, well, that is a fine looking man or a hot looking woman. And it's just natural. You can fight it. You can say, hey, I don't like, whatever race you think you don't like. I don't like so-and-so race. I just don't even look at them. You're probably lying. Now, why do I say this? I think there's been lots of things done for women. And men's reactions, we don't really readily identify as women. Because when I had somebody was talking to me about this theory, and I'm thinking about it, and I'm saying, I can't imagine being that taken with somebody, and men are. He's correcting me. He's like, no, we are. You have to understand. Okay. I'm going to get mail on this one, you guys. Okay, so okay, bear with me, okay? How do you feel, as a man, I'm asking the men out there, if a woman you like dates your best friend? Just the feelings that come with it. How do you feel if the woman you like dates a guy you can't stand? Yeah, you don't have to answer. Well, thank you, but you don't have to answer. I'm just saying, think for yourself the emotion that comes behind that. The complexities of business tend to happen sometimes when there's women there. It is a myth to think. Even today, in today's world, there are attacks on women physically for control exchanges. That's my nice and friendly way of saying the R word, right? They happen all the time. But that doesn't mean you weren't happy in the relationships that you have, right? There are lots of women that never experienced that at all. That was also happening during what we call slave days. There were full-blown relationships against the slave owner and his woman. It's just truth. But it's very difficult for a man to see his woman invest in another man. Okay? It's a very emotional thing. Even sometimes if someone breaks up with somebody, they still feel like that's theirs. So in this theory, because I'm going to call it a theory, because it's emotional, you don't have stats for emotional things. A lot of it had to do with these relationships and men sort of being men, right? If you want somebody's woman and you have the ability to take her from them using whatever means you can, it is often done. Even if it back in the day was by force. It's just by humiliating him in front of her. just by taking them off the plantation, just by selling them off and making sure you're there by yourself isolated. And that loss of family for a man. In the reverse too, there were lots of relationships between a slave man and his owner's wife. So, and a lot of times they fell in love. And you're like, what are you talking about? They didn't fall in love. Everybody hated everybody. This is not true. As a matter of fact, Alex Haley gives you a very beautiful example of how that's not true. And I think Thomas Jefferson, had a tribe of kids with this woman that was basically his wife, that he owned, technically. If you look at Alex Haley's theory on this, because he actually knows it's true, because that was his family. Queen was his great-grandmother or something like that. I'm sorry, I don't know what but it was his family, okay? And her mother was in a relationship. You'll also see the rivalry between women. I'm married to you, right? I am a white woman. You married to me for finances, because back then people married for status and finances. Married to you for status and finances, but you're in love with the person that's supposed to be your slave. Not only are you in love with her, but you're giving her everything she needs. Now she's in the house. You don't love me. This is perfectly illustrated modern day time in the movie Scandal, in the series Scandal. You see the dynamic play itself out again as it did in history. If you look at Queen, it gives you a historic version of the same thing. So a lot of, even the most non-racist person in the world, if you say, what about having kids with, you think about it, and it's not because the kids are mixed. It's because it implies what you do to get them. And I don't mean in vitro. That was modern day. I mean, in general, to have a child, you were doing something to get one. And this evokes emotion, right? It makes, if you hated this guy already, you couldn't stand him, he was like on your nerve anyway, and all of a sudden your girl starts dating him, you're like, what the hell just happened? I mean, you may even try to kill him. Don't believe me? There's stories everywhere, but let's just give you one example. There's a show called, comes on TV1. Fatal Attraction. Not endorsing Fatal Attraction. I watch it, I'm just saying. And literally, there was this rivalry going on between these two guys. They called one of them a red bone and the other one was darker. And they sort of had this rivalry between which shade of guy was better. And the girl that was dating the red guy actually left him and went to the darker guy. And I don't know why this was an issue for them, but they were in the South, so maybe that has something to do with it. But it was an issue for them, the color of their skin, like literally within the confines of the same race. And he shot him to death. Just walked up one day, got mad at him, and bam, 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 he's dead. And nobody knew why. Of course, the story goes backwards, and they take you into the actual reason, and the reason ended up being over this girl. Are you following me? So when I say, racism has a base, even if you just use the same race as an example, I'm just using it as an example, you can see how you can hide behind the color of the skin. It didn't really matter, right? It only mattered that this girl liked one more than the other. And now this man is dead. So it's an emotional subject, and it's one that people don't like to admit, but it was happening all along. It just enhanced the hatred that might have already been there. But it's a fallacy to think that those relationships had nothing to do with anything, and that all of those relationships were forced. That's the part we highlight because it was a reality, just like it's a reality today for any woman walking around. That reality never changed. It's still there. But it also has a flip side, and it's the flip side that can be a little bit more, even more so dangerous, or equally as dangerous, because it's dangerous to be in that situation too. Okay, you're welcome. So you see what I'm saying? So that's why it's complicated. There's a lot of reasons that will bring up emotions. So if when you have an emotional argument, it's easy to confuse it, but it's also easy to mask things under something else. I used that example on purpose. I used it because they're talking about the color of their skin, just like racist people talk about the color of their skin, but we know underneath that was something more. So stop looking at racism as the surface, because we're never going to get rid of it if we don't. We have to start going deeper than that. And we have to go past what's emotionally there. We understand the basis of it is financial. I mean, if you deny yourself that, then you really don't want to get over it. But the reality of the situation is, as a Caucasian person, you get more money, more finances, financial opportunities, just not handed to you, but that are already available for you to go get, as it is described in this article that I was talking about yesterday. Okay? If I don't have generational money, I can't go to my grandfather. He won't have it. You know, if I want to start a business and I can't get a loan, you know, if I'm denied by a bank or whatever, you have to find alternative means. But one of the alternative means, if you don't have inheritance, is not your family. Excuse me, because they don't have it. So that puts you at a deficit, even if you're not racist. You just period. Right? I think it fuels when you are in a position where you don't have enough to negotiate with. It makes the decision to turn you away even easier. Because now it looks like Karen makes it look legit. Right now it looks legit. Well, I can't give you this loan because you don't have any collateral. Sorry. But if you have all that and they reject you, then it's going to highlight it. They may still do it anyway, but it's going to highlight it, and then you have a chance to correct. Right? Okay. I feel like, does that answer? Let me know if it doesn't answer how you die. Jesus is great. That's exactly right. More questions people were asking me. It's quite kind of a few of them. And some of them were a little complex. So they covered various elements. Okay, so I don't seek to simplify. Somebody asked me that. Racism is a complicated issue. No, I just wanted you to know the base of it. Because I want to put you in the mindset so you can get the understanding of how it spiraled into other stuff. I needed you to bring you up to speed on how we got to this point. Some of it is just habit. If I grew up and I didn't know any Black people, and I am in a position where I can only be around, yes, you can actually ask me, and I'm in a position to be around, only people like me, it is shocking if you go into another environment. This is why you always hear somebody maybe grew up with generational wealth say insensitive things. It's not even racism at that point. It's just a lack of, it's just ignorance, basically. To me, sometimes people just sound ignorant. But don't Black people blah, blah, or, does your son play basketball? Because he's tall? And he's Black? Do you ask every tall person? It's like the assumption is always there, right? So I think it's, if you take it off of the one that's so emotional and you look at it financially speaking, if somebody only grew up with money and around people that were like them, ultimately you're going to have to get out of that environment. Life is short. So you're going to end up going somewhere where there's a group of mixed people and they're going to speak differently. And you're going to say, well, what do you mean get a loan? Why don't you just borrow it from your grandparents? And then they look at you and call you an idiot. But it's not, it's, you sound stupid to them and they sound ignorant to you. But it's only because we didn't respect where we both came from. And that's another part of the emotional part of racism, that we don't think before we assume something. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about just before somebody asks a different question. Feel free to ask a different question. I guess I won't delve into that. I feel like you got it. Did everybody get that? I mean, what I'm trying to say? Okay, need the example. Okay, so here's the example. There was a gentleman, I use this all the time, and it's because people were dumbfounded. There's a group of secretaries that are standing around this fax machine. And in walks this gentleman, and he's just going and he's pushing buttons and he's looking around and he's trying to just jam stuff. And they're laughing at him. They're calling him stupid. They're calling him an idiot. Like, who doesn't know how to use a fax machine? Oh my God, what an idiot. Under their breath to each other. So I walk over there and I say, listen, do you need some help? I wasn't a secretary, but I'm in there. He goes in there. I say, do you need some help? He says, yeah, sure. So I fax the paperwork. I go out. We walk away. Who's that idiot? Oh my God, what a fool. He doesn't know. I said, the president of Sony. President of the company. Now, to be a president, you have to be, I don't know, I would say somewhat smart. I'm going to say maximizely smart at the time. And here are these secretaries, not in that position, calling the person in that position an idiot. Now here's the lesson in that. Just because you do something every day doesn't mean everybody does it. He doesn't have to fax normally. The fact that he was down there faxing his own stuff is probably shocking. Like, don't you have somebody to do that? But he just wanted to do it on his own. So why are you calling people stupid? You sound ignorant. Right? So it's the same thing if you come into a group of minorities, say Black people, and you say something about what they deal with every day as if they don't know any better. Okay, so it's kind of the same thing, right? So, and the same thing in the reverse. If you just assume a white person's racist, I mean, what are you thinking? You sound ignorant. It's not true. They might have a lack of understanding, just like you do, about certain things. But the assumptions we're all making about each other is what makes racism ridiculous. Because A, where it was based, it's based on money. 2, it's based on interactions and relationships. And insecurities, shall we all throw in there. How you guys doing? Right? So I say all that because the person asked me why was I simplifying it, or why was I just focusing on the money. It's because I wanted to take out the unexplainable. We all will get that point of view. But we forget how to repair the problem. Because nobody really wants to. First, you have to figure out why we don't want to. By highlighting the obvious. Okay? Or the not so obvious. Okay, guys, don't ask me. I don't want to bore the people listening from the beginning. So that's what I was trying to say. County. So that's a complex question because I need more detail. That's not enough. And I don't know if it applies to, that's not enough information. The properties, what do you mean by that? Someone's asking a question, I'm sorry. They're asking about, they couldn't provide his properties after he was bailed. Now it's been 2 weeks, what should he do? I don't know what that means. Properties, you're just talking about the stuff he came in there with? Okay. All right, so I just wanted to answer some questions regarding that, and they were long answers, and I was trying to condense them and all of these things. But that's why I made it the way that it was when I was doing that video. I did it that way because I didn't want people to get confused. I wanted to make it clean and simple. How do I know there were relationships back then? There's proof. I gave you Jefferson as the example. I think it was Thomas Jefferson, right? Who's a slave woman was actually his wife, basically. And it was something everybody knew. Everybody knew it. I mean, he owned her, but that's because legally that's what was happening at the time. But it wasn't. Um, a lot of people did not want to end slavery, including Lincoln, who signed the Declaration of Independence. Because it's profitable. I said it. I'm sorry, you didn't see yesterday's video. You sound like a person that didn't see it. It's profitable. It makes money. Even now, I used as a modern day example, sports is the example. I'm not saying it's modern day slavery because you can choose your job. But what I am saying is you're getting your commodity in some sense because you are not involved enough in the bringing in of the money to the extent where they can be, you're not expendable. It sounds terrible, right? But that I was using that as the example of saying how much money you could be making if you really got yourself involved in the financial part of it. I did study finance, yes, I did. The economy was part of my study as well. Statistics were part of my study as well. Mathematics. Mm-hmm. How would I feel if I was called racist all the time? So I'm going to make the assumption that you're probably not minority. I guess the implication is that you're being called racist all the time. And I did address that. And I have empathies towards that because of my family. And I know that there's lots of people in my family that are not racist at all, but they are white people, and so they call them racist. Or they are, just in general, or just period. I mean, I feel I've seen it enough times in life that you just kind of go, it doesn't really apply to everybody, but how do you know if you're racist? Is that a legit question? I mean, here's the basics. Do you see them as different? If you're describing a story, we'll think of it this way. Like, say, for example, if I'm describing something, I've often had people say, I'll say whatever the story is, and then I'll be like, oh, he's so funny. And then I'll be like, you know how black people are? And they're like, he was black. Or that was a white guy. I'll be describing something. And that's because I didn't see it relevant to this. I mean, I didn't even think about it. I'm just telling a story about a person. To me, just a person. But you will often hear, even sometimes on the news, they tell you the race of the person. I'm gonna tell you a story. I was out with John the other. He's a black guy, and well, why don't you were thinking about it to remind me and yourself that this was somebody that I wouldn't normally be thinking of. I would have just assumed he was white if you were a white person. So that's actually racist in and of itself because you're describing something under the assumption that I just assumed the person was of a particular race. It doesn't apply to the story, but you are letting us know that we're different. Or you'll tell a story that you're proud of. So, I mean, they were talking, all loudly to them. And, I was like, person was Mexican. I was like, well, you said they were speaking a different language. That really is the only part that applied to the story. I didn't ask whether the person was Mexican or Chinese, or I didn't ask. But you felt the need to clarify that you protected a person of another race. That is racist. Because basically you see them as different. I don't know how many times I've heard somebody tell a story if they're of the same race and they don't describe the race of the person. So it can be done. But if the person is of a different race, in your mind, you automatically see them as different. You will describe the fact that they're different. So that's a subtlety you can look for if you are struggling with this scenario. if you feel a need to point out a lot of the differences between people, not culture wise. You're not saying in Brazil the law is this, therefore they are different. You're saying in Brazil, you know, I've had, you'll know, I've heard people say, and Mexicans, and the person was like, from the Dominican Republic. And I'm like, that is not a Mexican. Well, you know what I mean, Spanish, Mexican. They just threw it all. Everybody's Mexican that's Spanish because they're from California. That is racist. Because why do you the person is, first of all, Mexico is not the Dominican Republic. They're not even. This is not the same thing. Asian, but you know, Asians, as if it's one word. I might say, oh, was he Japanese? Was he Korean? Was he Chinese? And they'll say, well, I mean, he was Asian. I mean, duh, Alex. What are you asking me a ridiculous question for? They were Asian. That's all you need to know. And I'm like, that's not this, you know, they're not all one word. It's not one thing describes every person that's Korean, Japanese, or Chinese, or any other, Filipino, or whatever. You say Asian as a group, but they are separate. So if I'm asking the question, it's because I was curious as to see what race he was, you know, or where he was from. So, I mean, and don't think that I'm judging you. I have to catch myself sometimes back in the day. I mean, not so much now, but I worked on it because it's not the kind of person I want to be. And I feel like I could feel comfortable being that. A lot of times as a minority, you feel comfortable being racist because you're like, hey, they don't like me either. So I'm not, you know, shoot, I don't need to feel. But I didn't want to be that either. I just didn't. You know what I mean? I feel like I don't want to be part of the problem, but rather a little bit of part of the solution. Not by being naive. So let's not confuse the two. Some people are just like, I don't see race, and then they don't see anything racist, and that's not true. That's not even realistic. You know, you have to know how to spot it out if it's happening to you, but you don't have to live in it. So the thing that you will note, and I will highlight in some of my final wording for this question, for these types of questions, you don't want to live in it. This is how I made changes, and so I hope that something that I did can change somebody else. If you're making decisions, when I said Karen, it's because they're operating in racism. It's not to say that people don't feel it, and you know, if you're trying to get over it, it's by you have to stop operating in it. Not denying that it exists, but you don't operate in it. Because once you operate in that, you make decisions based on it. Right? So that's why I always say when people say something, I go, as long as you're trying, that's all we need. Because you keep trying and you will get there. And it's because that's the journey I took, to just not see it. And I didn't know I didn't see it until stuff like that was happening. I would describe something, I'd tell a whole story, a whole bunch of people in it. And I might mention something, or here's the person, and the person is like Asian. And I never said it once in the story because it didn't apply. I only described it. Then I'd be like, oh, I didn't realize I didn't say it. You know what I mean? Like, there's too many acceptable things that allow you to be racist. So you have to monitor yourself. Emotionally speaking. Now, yesterday's video, completely different. That is the base of racism. But as we've allowed it to get out of control and everybody pretends like it's just hatred of skin complexion or hatred of, once you stay on the surface and you want to be ignorant and naive and pretend that everybody's just racist because of the color of our skin, it's because you don't want to know anymore. Because that right there is an illusion. If you have two people of the same race going off on each other because of the color of their skin, then that's not what racism is based on. So we can stop lying at this point. It's based on other insecurities that are falling into place. Somebody's got some retracted stuff. What kind of stuff were you saying? You guys, do not come in here with some craziness. We will cut it off. I'm sorry. No disrespect. We just want the conversation to stay respectable. I want it to stay honest. I don't want, if you want to speak your mind, that's perfectly fine. Ranting and raving and going all in, unless there's a base for that, is not going to happen here. We will take it off. And if you're really bad, we will just block you. Because I'm not here for that. I really am not. I'm here, really, I learned things, and when I learned them, I like to tell them to people because people get a chance to learn it. The emotional part of racism is just exhausting. So I really was like, let's just go to the base. Let's just find out where it all started. Mm-hmm. Did they take them for money? What do you mean take? Oh, you're talking about in slavery? Yeah. I mean, they're going over there getting slaves in boatloads. Those are heads. You get paid for those heads. My numbers are accurate. So I said it yesterday. When you have like 990, it's not how many, you're not going to have that many slaves. It's just, this is what this range will pay you. So it's just giving a range and anything in that range. But the common, range was like 20, I think. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but not very, I don't know any, there might have been some in history that had 999 on one plantation. I mean, they might have, I don't even know if you had that many. You'd have to tell me, because honestly, I haven't found any research that said that somebody had that many. But it's like anything. It's like if I go, look at car ranges, it's, you might have that one luxury car or that Bentley and whatnot, but most people don't. So it's kind of like that's how they set it up number wise. From here to here, we're going to pay you this. From here to here, we're going to pay you this. It's not to say that the average person had that many. So I wasn't saying it that way. I was saying this is the range, and anything in between these ranges, this is what you will have. And I used as the illustration, if I had 3 of these slaves based on this money, I'm already fine. So you didn't really you needed only enough to run your plantation and to be able to still to afford to have them. Very few people probably could have afforded to have 999 slaves on one plantation. And why would you want to? Because that's not enough space for all those people. What made me research it? I actually said it yesterday. I was working in finance. I work around people with money. I, grew up around certain people. So I actually just kept hearing stuff. And I'm not the kind of person, this is why I like data and statistics. And I was probably all excited in statistics class because I like to learn. And I didn't want to just leave that as people saying stuff. It was common and I kept hearing it over and over again. And so I went and did the homework. And then when I learn something, I come out and share it if I can, if I have a platform to do so. Yep. Oh, thanks. It's always nice to be appreciated. I appreciate you too. Thank you. Why was I surprised people didn't know what a Karen was? You almost sound sarcastic when you say that, as if you were like shocked that you thought the person was a white person. You did. I don't know if they were, because I didn't physically see the person. But when they asked the question, I was shocked because it was a commonly used term. So I was not aware that people didn't really know that that was an actual person. Like, it's like an urban legend at this point. Like, they didn't know that a Karen came from a specific person, and it really was a person named Karen. Yep. How many Karens are there? God, I don't know. You want me to do research? You know what? Karen is a fairly new term, believe it or not, to describe this level of racism and the new face of it, because it is different. Before, it was get off my property. Sometimes the N-word was used and all of these things. That still exists, but it changes. And now the new face is more like, hey, how you doing? I'm glad you're my neighbor, blah, blah, blah. But it's to accumulate negative information to take you down. All right, you guys, I told you this was not a subject that you just hit and you don't exhaust yourself hitting it. It's the emotional part of racism is because a lot of people go into denial immediately. And that's why it's harder to explain. That's why people get confused. That's why people don't talk about it. That's why people don't want to have these conversations about the emotional part of racism, because people don't want to admit. We don't want to admit. And there was arguments when we first had this discussion that women had something to do with the situation, that they were falling in love with each other, that they were having kids and making sure that those kids and women were taken care of while they were there on the plantation, that some women did leave their husbands for either a slave or, you know, for the person that owned them technically at the time. To describe how long hatred can go on for a situation like that. Men don't make up easy like women. Women, if you're not involved with the person, really don't care. We care if you're trying to take my man and quote unquote. But if you're just kind of like, men just have a level of intensity when it comes to women that maybe women don't always understand, especially if they love her. Alex Haley, Queen, that's the other half of Roots. So Roots was a saga of one half of Alex Haley's family, and then the other half was this movie called Queen. Halle Berry's in it, actually. She plays Alex Haley's, I think it's his grandmother or something. Can't remember if it was his grandmother or great grandmother, but she plays the lead character, who is Queen, who was named by her father, actually, because his father was in love with her mother, who was a slave. His slave, technically, but married another woman because she was white and because it's a status thing when you get married back then. And legally, they couldn't have gotten married. First of all, they couldn't have even expressed the fact that they were wanting to be together. So you had to do it in secret. You guys have a lot. Okay, you guys, too many questions. We got a lot. Because my father, people said, how long ago? Since I was a kid. I mean, my father really sat me down and he took me. My father was very much into civil rights. My father was very much into learning about who you are and being comfortable being yourself. And my mom was like that. And so we were able to, I probably never remember not doing it. So there was always times when he would sit and explain things to me and tell you how people try to take stuff from you and all of these things, as his understanding was. And the financial part of it too, because it was there in the house, so we knew. And it just, throughout my life, I just kept doing it. And it helped me because it helped me not be racist. And it helped me understand the ignorance of somebody that was. And I mean ignorance as it is defined, that you just simply don't know any better, kind of thing. So it made it so it didn't hit me so hard, because I understood that you didn't know enough to be able to say anything other than what you're saying. All right, you guys, I want to go because I feel like this is very, very long, and it's a lot to cover. So I feel like I will be going over a lot of the same information, and I don't really want to do that unless you have something new to add. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. How do I know about the sports? Because I looked it up. I'm a sports fan. You guys don't even know how much sports I love. So anything interests me. When I realized it was 6.9% of the overall, economic, I'm thinking, so that and I said that because the majority of people that go into those fields tend to be minorities. No, I didn't say they weren't. Oh, yes, I did have, thank you. I had just another little bit of example of the financial aspect of sports and entertainment. I was dumbfounded, quite honestly, stupefied, if you will, that the top endorsement person, now this is out of all of the athletes, is actually a soccer player, and that's international, so it makes sense. And you right away, people just automatically know who that is. But I want to tell you how much he makes, because Cristiano Ronaldo. Nobody knows that? Yeah, he's the number one with endorsements. Uh, it's literally what somebody says because he's good looking. I literally said the exact same thing because I don't watch soccer. It's one of the sports that I just actually don't watch or even invest a lot of time in, but I know who he is. So that's saying something. That's saying he's transcending the sport because I know who he is and I didn't even know what sport he was playing. I just knew that I just saw him on TV and was like, oh, who's that? So I'm pretty, I hate to say it, but that's probably something to do with it. But anyways, he makes, was it 260 million in just endorsements and 200 million a year with his sport. The next in line is also a soccer player. Is it Messi? But he drops way down to 135. And then everybody else after that is subsequently lower, including Patrick Mahomes, who made 20. How crazy is that scenario? I mean, I was so shocked at the difference. Couldn't believe it. I was like, you have got to be kidding me. Like, I didn't know he had that many endorsements. I mean, I knew he had some, but I mean, really to the extent that he had. I'm always shocked when you look at numbers because numbers say a lot. So I wanted to just say that because I wanted to also 6.9%, and he's making that much money on just endorsements. How much more do you want to think he becomes more valuable to the sports? To make that much of a profit. So let's think about that. That's it, you guys. All right. Thank you so much. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. I'm sorry this video was so long. Whenever I answer questions, it tends to be long because I have to go over stuff because somebody will ask and I will have to clarify what I said earlier. You know, so I'm not mad at it, but just for the people watching, I didn't want you to be bored with it. I just wanted you to understand why I was doing it because I do have to go over a lot of stuff. And then people ask me questions like they're doing right now. Will I do a part 3? I don't know. I don't like to get, I pretty much felt like I said what I had to say and all of that. But I do want to make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you click the notification bell so you'll know when I'll be on. Not anything emotional when I do mindsets and all of these things tend to be not as statistics based, but more to just answer what people are asking. And so a lot of it is very long answers and I am also repeating, somebody just asked me the question again. I feel like people come in at different times. So I feel like when you come in, I want to make sure I get you what you need, but I can't always do it. So part 3, I don't know. Maybe if it's a little more structured. Thank you so much, you guys. Always happy to see you here. And I will see you next time.